Me, a bro.
Yep.
He, a dude.
That's good stuff. All right. Let's try it. Okay. Welcome to the We Will Journey podcast. We're talking about faith and life as it happens, and not the glossy exterior we wish it was.
Oh.
What, man? What did I do wrong?
I think you said it's because all the things I was thinking about before. But we can edit that. You got that part good.
Oh.
You got it good. Okay.
Okay. All right.
Okay, just...
Now it's your turn.
Good.
Yeah.
Wait. We're going to get under the surface. I should have said all those things before. We should have waited down and dirty until after we read this part.
Okay.
Okay. Wait. We get under the surface and explore the down and dirty. Okay. Maybe we should. It doesn't have to be word for word, right?
No. I mean, I gave an interpretation.
Okay. All right. We get under the surface and explore the down and dirty of life as it pertains to our beliefs, our relationships, politics, and absolutely everything else.
Oh, there we go. That was good. All right.
Email. That's right, I said email. Seems like everybody's got one these days, even us. So if you want to get in contact with us or chat about the weather, you can shoot us an email at wewilljourney.connect@gmail.com. Look forward to hearing from you or reading from you.
Three, 2, 1.
Well, good morning, Jeremy. I'm sorry that we've had so many technical difficulties, but it's good to see your face, and I hope you enjoy seeing my logo. It's not actually my logo, but it is a logo.
Well, I'm perfectly fine with not seeing your face. So
well, I appreciate I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. So, but it's...
I hope that's not your logo, Tyler, because I would have expected better from you. That's fine. If that's as creative as you are, then
that's it's like Prince's symbol. When Prince didn't have a name for a while, he was just a symbol for a little bit. It'd be something like that. It's weird seeing the two brothers face to face. That's nice. I like that. So there you go. All right.
That's nice. Nice view. Nice shirt, by the way. Actually, that's a better symbol. Isn't that a Neutral Grounds sweatshirt you got going on?
It looked like a hemp t-shirt. It looked like a hemp shirt or something. Is that like a marijuana leaf?
It's supposed to be a coffee plant, I think. It was my sister's coffee shop.
Oh, okay.
Neutral Grounds. It's Neutral Grounds.
Yeah, nice.
Tyler knows. That's where he does all of his parties.
We actually did do a party there. We supported the effort. Natalie had her graduation party there. Neither one of you were invited.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I don't recall this.
Yeah.
Which graduation party? The funny thing is, you get a huge shindig when you graduate from high school, and kind of like a yay when you graduate from undergrad, and then nobody does anything when you get your master's or PhD. Well, it's like family members, maybe.
This was
or
her
your husband.
Yeah, this was her master's degree. She graduated from Concordia there in Seward, and so we had a kind of a get together for all the family and some friends. Some friends, not all friends. Not all friends. Some friends.
That's a bigger shindig than most people do for their masters. I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, we were all very proud of her, and so we wanted to celebrate it, and since her dad was willing to pay for it, we pulled it off.
That always sweet.
What's that?
You crack yourself up.
Mm-hmm. Oh shoot, that's right. You don't find me funny. I forgot about that. Yeah, this isn't going to play well for the podcast. You're not enough of a stranger to us, Jeremy. If you were more of a stranger, we would feel like we need to have more etiquette and do a proper interview. So let's just we're going to stop talking about all this stuff, and we're going to dive right into why we had you here, Reverend. How do you want us to address you, Jeremy? Do you want it to be Reverend Sander, Pastor Sander, Pastor Reverend? What do you prefer?
Whatever you call me is fine.
Okay.
As you know, my church doesn't call me pastor, so which is kind of strange, but whatever.
So why don't they call you pastor? Why is that?
Why don't they? Yeah, that's my question.
Because they don't believe in the term pastor. Kind of, it's run by elders, not pastors. Being a pastor is a gift, not an office.
It's a gift.
So they don't think you're very gifted, is what you're saying.
What they'd argue.
Yeah.
So it's not a title.
So they call you Elder Sander?
No, they just call me Jeremy or Jeremiah, depending on who it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I've noticed your voicemail since you've moved there or been there has been Jeremiah, which always kind of makes me laugh when I hear you say, "This is Jeremiah."
Right. No, I tried to make the transition here, but it didn't work.
Okay. So you don't so you don't actually prefer Jeremy?
I could go either way. I like Jeremiah, but it's kind of a hopeless cause, so.
Yeah.
My wife calls me Jeremy, so.
I always just called you Sander, but it feels weird calling you Sander with Seth on the call, because then either one of you may answer. But anyways.
Well, here, I don't think anybody even knows my name is Sander because there's always Sanders. So if you called me Sander, I probably wouldn't even recognize what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah. Well, Pastor Sander, thank you for being on the call with us today, and also Jeremy and just plain Sander. So we'll try to cover everything, and Jeremiah. But Jeremy, you actually put me onto a podcast that I've been listening to recently. Told me about a book that the guy that hosts the podcast wrote, and that's been super interesting for me. Preston Sprinkle. That's right. So I'm into there's 6 episodes that discuss the trans movement on his podcast called Theology in the Raw, and he wrote a book called Embodied. So there you go, Preston. There's a little plug for you, buddy. The 10 people that listen to this will probably be checking that out immediately. But anyways, man, this is like a crazy thing. Like this whole movement, and he talks specifically actually on episode 4 of the 6. He's speaking with a woman. Her name is Helena, and I don't know her last name, but she really goes into this idea of, or not an idea, but it's actually just statistically true that teenage girls are rapidly moving into this movement. I just found that really fascinating. I actually encounter this quite a bit with some of the work that I do. And so what is it, Jeremy, that got you to the point where you're like, this is something I need to research?
Well, actually, before the pandemic hit, myself and one of the other elders were had started to teach a Sunday school class on sexuality and gender. And that was going to be one of the topics we covered, but I felt like I didn't really have a very good grasp on the subject. And so it probably wouldn't have been as in depth when we got to that portion of the Sunday school class. But then the Sunday school class was canceled because of the pandemic. And so then I stumbled on this book, this author, this podcast, and decided to do more research so that hopefully at one point we can pick up that Sunday school class again, maybe in the fall. And I'll be able to point to more resources on the subject and have a little more knowledge on the subject, although it still won't be first-hand knowledge, which won't be experiential knowledge, which is probably more helpful. But at least I have someone who's done a lot of research and knows a lot of transgender people and thinks biblically about the subject.
Right.
And I also appreciate that his approach is compassion and not fear and, oh, they're all out to get us and we need to put a stop to this. I feel like that's the message I usually get from the Christian culture is, like you're saying, there is a push in our culture for people to, just choose whatever gender they want to be, and it's fine. There's no difference between the two genders, and obviously that's a dangerous movement. But there are also people who really are hurting and struggling with gender dysphoria.
Right.
And I appreciate that his primary approach is how do we demonstrate love and compassion towards people who are hurting. So that's kind of what led me to be doing this research. And my wife works at the university and is dealing with this all the time, with people putting their preferred pronouns at the end of their emails, and her having to navigate how to show love and compassion to people, and while also believing in the biblical view of gender as well. So she and I are reading this book together. We haven't finished it yet, but
well, let's just start there then, since you brought it up.
Listen to all of the episodes.
Okay, so you said you mentioned the biblical view of gender. So when you talk about that, what do you see as the biblical view of gender?
Well, that there are only two genders, and that they are male and female, and that there's a difference between the two genders. They're both created in the image of God. Now, how that plays out with people who are experiencing transgender issues, I don't fully have my mind wrapped around it, because obviously there's people who are born with intersex, and there's a lot of things we just don't know. But the push in our culture towards you can choose whatever gender you want to be is not biblical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that interesting, and I think what you just talked about there gets lost in a lot of the conversation today, and I know a lot of the conversation that we hear is not necessarily looking for a biblical point of view, too, when it comes to gender, like the gender discussion. That's not that's not a subject that they really want to talk about. But I do find it interesting because both genders are reflections of God. So I do find that whole thought process just really interesting, because if you take a man, he is missing aspects of who God is, and if you take a woman, she is missing aspects of who God is, and together they're that more complete image of God. That's just interesting to me, right? Especially being Orthodox Christian, and obviously believing in the Trinity and thinking through that whole thing and how we kind of are a reflection of the Trinity in that way.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the creation narrative is fascinating because, Adam was created, and I would assume, because Genesis 1:26 says God created male and female, but this is still when Adam is the only one in existence.
Mm-hmm.
So when Adam was created, he was both. He had both male and female tendencies, whatever you might say.
He had a female rib.
And then when there you go. And then when Eve was taken away from him, marriage is kind of a picture of bringing back that oneness that was there at first. That's why it says the two will become one flesh. They become fully God's image once again, as they were originally in the garden. Anyway, I don't know. It's fascinating, just that breaking off of Eve and then the coming back together in marriage and the sexual union. I know we're off on an entirely different subject than gender, but
not really, because
the opening chapters of Genesis.
Yeah, I don't think we're really off, because it's just part of the discussion that normally doesn't get discussed. So like, if we view, the narrative in Genesis as kind of our origination, that's where we begin. There's something that conversation has something to offer to the gender conversation, I believe. I don't know if you think that's separate, but I feel like that is potentially like something together. But you said something interesting there, Jeremy, that I've never really thought about or even really ever heard, that you think Adam had both male and female, like he was both?
Characteristics. Well, I mean, no, he wasn't, obviously. But as far as when you think of masculinity and femininity, he would have been both at that. I mean, I guess it's hard to really say, but the fact that woman came from him, Eve came from him, it would imply that before Eve came from him, there was both masculinity and femininity.
Huh. I mean, that's interesting. I've never really heard that discussed before. Seth, you made a good point. He apparently had a very feminine rib. So you feel like...
Yeah,
can you back that up, Seth? Do you have some biblical evidence that would make that rib especially feminine?
Yeah, God made it into a woman, so he took the feminine part of Adam and created a woman.
Yeah,
and then Adam was all man after that. Maybe the rest of us still are we born with that rib? I don't know. Did Adam have? That's the question. I don't know. Did Adam have one less rib then, or did he have now the normal amount of ribs as every other human being? Because maybe we all have that feminine rib, but he's the only man who was total man. Could that be?
I don't think we'd be born with the rib. Although, interesting, there's a debate as to whether the word should be translated rib or side. Some people think, basically, God took from Adam's side rather than rib, but it doesn't really matter ultimately.
Some of his organs?
Basically, split him in half.
Man, that
nice.
I always thought he would have been like the most handsome man ever created, but if he was only half,
that reminds me of those.
Yeah, it could be more
entertainers. The one half of them will be female, the other half will be male, and then they turn to the side and they sing. That's what that makes me think of. But anyways, so yeah, but. Well, I find it interesting, Jeremy, that you said you personally aren't encountering this too much in just kind of your circle, that your wife does encounter this quite a bit, because she does work at a university.
Yeah.
Has she seen this shift take place since she's been there? I think it has kind of happened in this time frame, probably from when she started to now. I'm guessing when she first started, she probably didn't see this very much, and now it's become a thing, right? Am I correct in that?
Well, definitely the push towards pronoun use, like preferred pronoun usage, has been more a thing in the last few years.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would have said she probably didn't encounter transgender people as much early on. But some of that is she has a different job now too, so she's just around different people.
Sure.
But it's just more accepted now. And then with the push towards using preferred pronouns, there's a lot of people who aren't necessarily transgender who still, for support of the transgender community, would prefer to be called they or them, simply because they also don't think that, you know, there's a difference between men and women, and hey, I don't want you to call me him or her. That's a whole fascinating thing.
Yeah, I've noticed on LinkedIn, everybody's profile now says he, she, whatever their preferred pronoun is. For the most part, from what I've noticed, it all kind of falls within line. But as I know them to be, you know, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, one of the things that I found really fascinating about, so I kind of referenced it before, where, you know, teenage girls have kind of become the thrust of this movement. Prior to that, it was adult men that were transitioning. That, you know, and one piece of that I had never ever thought about, and I can't remember which episode of that podcast it was that talked about it, but basically adult men transitioning to be like a woman. I guess I'm not for sure exactly how to say that because they don't become female, but to look like a woman, because it's like they're trying to recreate what they're attracted to. I found that really crazy. I mean, did you listen to that one, Jeremy?
Yeah, I did. That was the first one.
Okay.
He was a pretty controversial guest because the secular trans community kind of rejects a lot of his ideas. But yes.
Yeah.
I think he goes by male, but he's actually a trans woman.
Right.
He's transitioned to be a woman, yes.
Yeah. But I hadn't thought of that. I hadn't heard of it. To me, that almost seems like there would be kind of a pretty direct correlation to pornography with that idea. Is that probably correct?
I don't know.
The other part of it that I think is really controversial, and I actually saw one of Joe Biden's appointees to his cabinet is transgender. Is that correct, Jeremy? Have you seen that?
Yeah. Yep.
And I can't remember what role she would be filling, but it's something to do with health and human services, isn't it? Is that correct?
I don't recall.
Yeah.
I saw that Big Focus on the Family got kicked off of Twitter for a while because I think it was Twitter, because they said something about it.
Okay.
That was controversial. I mean, they just said she's not actually a woman because you can't make yourself a woman, and then they got kicked off of Twitter for saying that.
Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Well, I saw like a little bit of Rand Paul interviewing, not really interviewing, but asking her questions for the for the hearing, that the confirmation hearing that she was a part of.
Yeah.
And he was talking about
gotcha.
And he was talking about providing hormone therapy to teenage girls, and I guess this happens through Planned Parenthood, which I had no idea. I had no idea any of this was going on, but in some states, I think maybe as young as 14 or 15, you can go into Planned Parenthood and tell them you want to start transitioning, and they will basically they will give you the hormone therapy drugs to help you start going through this process, and you don't need parental consent. And it's just this crazy. I had no idea. I'm like totally clueless about all of this. But as I'm learning about this stuff, like more stuff is starting to make sense in my brain that I've actually been a part of, like it's kind of helping me make sense of some of this stuff. But in the podcast, they're just talking about, and not just Preston himself, but the people that he's talking to that have gone through this, they're just talking about the fact that this is totally nuts. Like, this is crazy that teenagers, can make this huge life decision. They don't have to have any parental consent whatsoever. Does that just like kind of, how does that sit with you, Jeremy? Like, what is that, when you hear that, what does that do to you, I guess? I don't know. Like, how does that sit with you?
Well, yeah, it's just the giant push in our culture that if you believe you are a different gender, you're the one that determines that, and you can choose to be that gender, and no one should stop you from being that gender.
Yeah.
And, the hard part, that conversation that they had with Helena, she was just expressing a lot of what she was experiencing as a teenage girl was not being happy with her body image, not being happy with, her breasts, not being happy with how adolescence, puberty was taking place. And before, that would have just been a normal part of the teenage experience, and people would have been like, well, you'll get used to it. I know this is a strange time in your life, but you'll come to terms with who you are. But now it's, oh, well, if I'm not happy, it must be because I am actually the wrong gender and I need to change my gender. And the push in our society is that, hey, just go ahead and do that. And yeah, it sounds really just dangerous to be pushing that on kids and teenagers when you really haven't come to grips yet with who you are as a person, to be making drastic life changes like that at that time in your life. Seems like you should wait till you really have a handle on who you are and are comfortable with who you are before you decide that, oh yeah, this is really a decision I want to make.
Well, especially because in the States, you're not really seen as an adult as far as any other decisions you're allowed to make. Like, I mean, you're not allowed to smoke, you're not allowed to drive, you're not allowed to drink. At 14, you're not allowed to vote. Like all these, like kind of maybe important decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a big monumental kind of whatever benchmarks, some of these things. But yet, like you're. They think, okay, you're able enough, you're smart enough, you're, you know enough about yourself to make basically the biggest decision you could make as far as altering your life.
Right. And
that's fascinating.
Sorry. The hard part is it's such a push in the culture that if you say anything against it, you're basically ostracized. J.K. Rowling was it last year or 2 years ago, said something against the movement and basically said something along the lines of, well, she made a comment about how trans women aren't actually women, something along those lines. And man, she got blasted. And then she just expressed that, hey, I am all for transgender people. I love them. but the push in our culture is dangerous. And she said, if there had been that push in a culture when I was a teenager, I probably would have transitioned, because I was struggling with who I was as a person, but I came through that and came to accept who I was. But man, she is pretty much, every time she's brought up now and her movies are brought up, people mention about how she's transphobic or things along those lines. And, that's just one example.
Do you think...
the hard part is there are people who are truly... Sorry, go Tyler.
Yeah, I was just going to say, do you think that this is kind of like a direct result of the fact that we feel entitled to happiness? So, like, culturally, any pain and suffering whatsoever is kind of unacceptable. Like, we feel entitled to immediate gratification in our context. And so do you think this is just like another aspect of that kind of manifesting itself culturally? Because, in so much of our life, we just have immediate gratification. So if as teenagers we don't feel comfortable with who we are, then this is a kind of, the quick fix. This will get you on the right track because now you can feel immediately gratified.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I think some of it is wanting love and acceptance, and you feel that love and acceptance from the trans community, and so you start to identify with them, and it's also just the human search for purpose and fulfillment.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't find it in Jesus Christ, you look for so many other things to find that fulfillment, and maybe this will make me fulfilled.
Right.
So it's all wrapped up in a lot of those things.
Yeah. I was actually I read an article a couple days ago, and it was talking about evasion. Basically, ways like culturally and socially that we evade acknowledging sin, basically. And one of the things that it talked about was just amusement, being amused, constantly being entertained. And we have so many ways to do that. I think this is one of the first generations, or we're dealing with some of the first generations, I should say, of people that don't actually have to be alone with their thoughts and their feelings for a very long period of time. Like, it seems like, if we experience something negative, if we experience something that's uncomfortable, we can immerse ourselves in some form of entertainment very quickly and start to move on from that, not really have to be alone with those thoughts and feelings. I mean, does that make sense to you, Jeremy? Is that something you've thought about?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think even as Christians, we're constantly looking for entertainment and to fill the quiet moments that we have. We don't really take time to just dwell and have quiet around us and not be constantly bombarded by entertainment.
Yeah.
Whether it's on our cell phones or on our TV screens.
Right. Well, it feels like that in and of itself probably is maybe having a greater negative impact on our society than probably what we realize. When you no longer have to kind of experience the full measure of whatever action you took, or was maybe taken and happened to you, you just kind of move on really quick. I just can't help but think that a lot of the things that we're seeing in our world today may be the consequence of that.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's part of it. Seth has some thoughts. Go, Seth.
I have lots of thoughts.
So I'm letting you talk.
What did you say?
You haven't talked much. You haven't shared much, so I'm letting it. Your time.
Well, we're
It's my
interviewing
time to
you,
shine,
Jeremy.
baby.
So we want to hear your thoughts. We want to pick your
We don't care
beautiful
about
brain.
our thoughts.
Yeah.
Tyler shared my thoughts so many times. He's trying as best as possible.
I mean, I just imagine Seth probably is around this, maybe even more so, probably more so than you and I are, living in Europe.
What's in it?
Maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, last year it's been hard because we've kind of last year. What is it now? Yeah, a little over a year. It's been hard because we haven't been in contact with a lot of newer youth and a lot of new people because the youth center's been closed and all these things. And for the most part, we either are like mentoring, discipling, and meeting with people who are in the church, and either they have kind of maybe a certain view on that, or maybe sometimes I think in the church it's hard to open up about those things when you are struggling with them, or we're dealing with younger kids and like our tutoring program and stuff like that. We did have a girl a few years ago who now has made a transition. Back when I knew her, she just kind of maybe dressed more like a tomboy, I guess you'd say, and that kind of thing. And so she wasn't necessarily, I don't think, very outspoken about it at that time, but now she has made that tradition. It has a different name now and everything. But I haven't come in contact with that as much. And I think I was talking to you about that the other day, Jeremy, that, I've had a number of friends over the years that are homosexual or struggle with homosexual attraction. But as far as the transgender thing, like that's something I haven't come a lot in close contact with. And I don't know if it is interesting because I was thinking that too recently, as a lot of these things are coming up that, here it might be more prevalent. But I haven't noticed it that much. I definitely see people who are going through that process and come in contact with them. But as far as personally, I haven't had as much experience, and that's why I probably also haven't gotten as much down the path as informing myself in a lot of these areas. So it'd be cool to listen to this podcast or even read that book that you suggested to kind of get more of a knowledge of those kind of things. As I'm sure in the future it will become more and more of something that just is a part of our daily or weekly ministry.
Yeah, no, and there might even be a stronger push in the States right now than in Europe. I don't know. I don't live in Europe, but it's a really strong push here. And the hard part is these are people that are hurting, and yes, there's this pressure in the culture that, hey, you can just choose whatever gender you want. But then there are also people who legitimately, from the time they are, as early on as they can remember, they haven't felt whole. They haven't felt right in the gender they were born with. And these are hurting people that need love and compassion. And I don't have all the answers, but that's a piece that I would really like the church to see, rather than getting involved in all these culture wars and arguing about bathrooms and really being fearful of the culture, like being an example of love and compassion while also standing for the truth.
Yeah.
So there's
I think that
it's a hard path to navigate, though.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because, at the end of the day, these are hurting people. They've experienced some sort of pain or hurt or discomfort, or something's going on in their life that has caused this, and to ignore that and just make it about an issue and make it political, I believe, doesn't really fulfill our call to be kingdom-minded. And not only to be kingdom-minded, but to act in kingdom ways. So, yeah, at the end of the day, we have a person that is hurting. I don't know, Seth, I don't know if we've talked about this, but when I was taking a sociology class, we had to do a diversity experience. Have I told you about this?
I don't know. It's not ringing a bell. But.
Okay, yeah. We had to do a diversity experience, and so we did, and our professor gave us the opportunity to participate in the audience as just kind of a listener of a panel. It was like at that point in time, I don't think it was quite as long of an acronym. So it was LGBTQ. I don't know how much of that existed at that point in time, but I don't need. Did I say it right there? LGBTQ. Is that right? Am I forgetting?
Yeah, you did.
It feels like I'm forgetting a letter.
That's how it used to be. Yeah.
Yeah. So
sometimes they add more letters, but really most people just use those.
Yeah. So anyways, and there was a man on this panel who had transitioned to being a woman. And he had, just a lot of discomfort from an early age, and he had a very masculine father that was very hard on him. I don't think physically abusive, but just made him feel like he was less, because of kind of who he was. And so he kind of talked about his story, and he just experienced a lot of pain. I think he found some acceptance in college, but still didn't feel like he was totally comfortable living as a man. Transitioned to being a woman, or living as a woman, and I had not really engaged with the forum at this time, but I just asked. It was the only question I asked, and I just asked him. I said, "Has transition to being a woman or living as a woman, has it made, the things that you've struggled with in your life easier?" And I said, "Has it given you some relief?" And he said, "No. If anything, it's made it harder." And of course, part of the assignment for me was then to write about this experience. And I couldn't help but pick up on the fact that, here is a solution to a problem that our culture is proposing, right? So this is your problem. Here's a solution. And I just made the observation. I felt like I was pretty neutral on it, but I just made the observation. I said, it doesn't look like this has actually solved any of his problems. It feels like, and he stated himself, that it's made it worse, and like you've been talking about, Jeremy, like culturally right now, you can't say anything negative against this movement. But, what my fear is that we have people that are really, really hurting. And culturally, we're saying this is how to solve your problem. But the reality is it doesn't solve any problems. And like this man said, it just made it worse. It made his life more difficult. And so that, in my mind, just rational thought says that's not actually a solution then. Now for some people it may offer some relief. I get that, but not for everybody. So to offer this is kind of like the cure-all. That seems really dangerous to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. And, part of it is they never take the time to step back, and talk things through with a counselor and find out, what's really why there is the hurt and pain. And maybe in meeting with a counselor, they would come to the conclusion that, hey, I really should transition. But there's a lot of other mental health issues and other things that are taking place in someone's life that should be dealt with. Mm-hmm. It's not like transitioning is going to take away all of those other feelings of hurt. And like you said, every trans person is different, and for some of them, maybe it does, like you said, alleviate it. But if you don't really examine yourself and take a look at what's causing the hurt and pain, just transitioning isn't going to relieve all of that.
Mm-hmm. Hurt and pain. Yep. I know something that I've encountered a lot is just a general feeling of not mattering, and of not having much significance in the world. Being unloved, and not having any kind of purpose. So, and I feel the biblical narrative gives us a lot of answers to those feelings and those questions. And so I feel like as Christians, we can speak into that with like a lot of hope, like, yes, you still may need therapy. Yes, you still may need, other things, but as people that are called to minister, whether or not our title is officially pastor or elder or whatever it is, Jeremiah or whatever your title is. But we have a great message, to convey to the world about who we are and if we're loved and if we have purpose and if our life has meaning and value, so I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us just to say, yes, you are loved. Yes, you are valued. The part, Jeremy, that we're not going to have time because you have to go, we're not going to have time to discuss it, but maybe in a part 2 of this at some point in time, as a church, how do we walk with these people? Like, that's a part of the discussion that I think a lot of people just want to avoid altogether because it doesn't feel comfortable to them. But this is an important thing that we actually talk about how to walk with these people and disciple people that are experiencing things like this, all kinds of addictions, all kinds of, other transformative experiences that maybe they regret, but we're not really good at this. A lot of us aren't really good at this, and I think it's something we should talk about sometime.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think there should be a different approach if you're dealing with a non-believer versus someone who's a believer.
Sure.
Many times we try to push the standards of the Bible on people who, don't acknowledge God and don't see the Bible as being a guide for them.
Right.
They just need to experience God's love and compassion and acceptance. Whereas someone who's a believer and is dealing with this, it's a different approach, I think. I mean, you still listen and love God's love and compassion, but you also can use the Word of God as you talk with them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, dude, it was good. I know you didn't get to see my face much, and so for that I am sorry because it really is an experience. But it was good seeing your face, hearing your voice, getting to talk to you again. So, anyways, thank you for joining us today. Seth, any parting words for your brother?
My pleasure.
I gotta echo what you said, man. I do get to see your face a lot, Tyler. So I guess for me, it was a special treat to see Jeremy's face. And even though I guess maybe I missed your face a little bit, this was fun. And all I did was really watch his face the whole time because I couldn't get a word in between you two. So
yeah. Well, you are the little brother in the mix. You're the inferior one. you have to kind
It
of...
it brought me back 15 years.
That's right, man. That's right. You just take it all in. So, but anyways, dude, thank you, Jeremy. Have a beautiful day.
My pleasure.
All right, dude. We'll talk.
Love you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you later, man. We do love you.
I love both of you guys too. I love Seth more than Tyler though, because he's my actual physical brother.
Dude, that should not mean anything. That really is a little bit hurtful, and I may challenge you theologically on that one. So,
Sorry, Tyler. You can't change.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. I mean, Jesus did say, "Who's my mother? Who's my brothers?"
I was just gonna bring it up.
So you're saying you love Tyler like a mother and you love me like a brother.
But
So.
see, I changed Seth's diapers, and I've never done that with you. So there's a more of an intimate connection.
Still time, Jeremy. There's still time.
Yeah,
30
dude.
years.
Yeah, dude. You may have your opportunity. Don't say never.
I'll leave that to Natalie.
It'll be even more intimate.
Natalie would probably try to defer it back to you. All right.
Have a good rest of the day.
All right,
Seth,
man.
have a good late afternoon, evening.
Thank you very much. See ya.
All
Thanks
right.
for coming.
Yeah.
I am a pilgrim and a stranger, and traveling through this wearisome land. I got a home in that yonder city, oh Lord, and it's not made by hand. I've got a mother, a sister, and a brother who have gone to that sweet home. Well, I'm determined to go and see them, a good Lord, over on that distant shore. As I go down to that river of Jordan, just to bathe my weary soul. If I could just touch the hem of his garment, good Lord, I believe it would make me whole. And when I'm dead, laying in my coffin, all my friends all gather round. They can say I'm just sleeping, good Lord, a sweet peace I have found.